The animals are only in perception. They perceive, but we conceive. So we can actually conceptualize. And this is something that differentiates us from other creatures. So يعبر عنه بالعقل الأول. So this is the first intellect. كما في التعبير البعض. So he means the philosophers. وقال قوم العقل ها هنا عبارة عن القلم المذكور في الخبر الآخر. والله أعلم. And some of them said that the intellect here refers to, it's an expression for the aforementioned pen in the previous khabar tradition. Wallahu a'lam. And Allah knows best. So he's saying Allahu a'lam. He's not really taking a position here, but he does indicate that he inclines towards that position of al-aql al-awwal. ثم أوجد الله تعالى السماء والروحانيات. So after that, Allah made the heavens and all of the immaterial substances, the spiritual matters. الذين لا يستكبرون عن عبادتي ولا يستحسرون. Excuse me. So they are neither puffed up with pride from devotion to God, nor do they weary of that devotion. They don't get tired. So these are creatures that are created solely for the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They don't have shahwa, they don't have animality, they have pure spirit, the angelic realm. وإيجاده لهذه الأشياء على سبيل الإبداع. And so his creation of all of these things is by way of ibda', which is unparalleled creativity. In other words, ibda' is على غير مثال مسبق. There's no previous template. So all of human creativity is from previous templates. Like whenever they do aliens or any of these fantasy things, there's always, why do they have hands and faces and they speak? Because they can only work from pre-existing templates. They cannot conceptualize anything outside of some type of experience they've had. Whereas Allah can do from على غير مثال مسبق. There's no pre-ordained template. There's nothing that Allah is working on. There's no iterative process where, I'll try this or I'll try that. It's ibda'. Badi'u samawati wal ard. So the badi' is the originator of the heavens and the earth without any prior existent thing to suggest to God what he should do, what God should do. So وَإِبْدَعُهُ إِيجَادُ الشَّيْء لَا عَنْ شَيْءٍ مَوْجُودٍ مِنْ قَبْلُ. So ibda' is to create a thing without any prior thing that enables that thing to come into existence. لا عن شيء موجود من قبله. It's not from some pre-existing thing or idea or template. ثم خلق الأركان الأربع. So this is a pre-modern type of, and I do think it's perfectly valid. It's more poetic than it is scientific, but it's based on experience. So then he says, then he created the four elements. So the arkan al-arba'a are the four elements. Most pre-modern cosmologies believed in 4 or 5 elements. So for instance, if you go to Ayurveda, if you go to the Hindu tradition, you'll find they have the elements. If you go to the Chinese tradition, they have the 5 elements. If you go to the Greek tradition, they have the 4 elements. So there was this idea of what were the fundamental elements. I mean, now we know with the table of elements that there's over 100 different types of elements. There's a lot of elements, but all of them will go back to these basic things. And so in that way, harakan mutanatti'un, if you just look at it at a basic level, these things are true. So al-harara, so like you can say radium is an element, but it comes out of the element of fire, right? Because it's heat, it's a type of radiation. So and so that's harara, which is heat. Buruda, which is cold. It's the absence of heat, right? Buruda. And then rutuba, which is wet or moist. and then yubusa, which is dry. So these 4 elements, human beings, we have these in our bodies, according to this traditional model. Foods are hot, wet, cold, or dry. So for instance, dates are hot and dry. So if you eat a lot of dates and you're hot and dry, they can actually create disruptions, like you can break out in rashes, things like that. This is all experimental mujarrab, as the Arabs say. Mauritania, they know these things very well, because I was eating a lot of dates when I was there. Maryam kind of felt sorry for me because the food was so limited. People from West Africa know about this. I mean, it's amazing how few things that people live on out in the desert. So she would get the dates out, and I ate a lot of dates, and then I broke out. And then they all said, you're eating too much, it's hot and dry. So they understood that. It's mujarrab. So then these elements were created, and then the jamadat. The jamadat in the peripheries tree, you have the substance, and then the first thing you have, is it material, immaterial, and then is it living or is it non-living? So if it's non-living, it's jamad. These are called jamadat. And then the living is the namiyat. So then is it vegetable or animal, right? So the namiyat are the things that grow, and then the haywanat are the animal things. So these are sentient beings. And then وَخَتَمَ بِصُورَةِ الْإِنسَانِيَةِ, and then he completed creation with this human form. كما أشار إليه النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. So this hadith, بقوله, it's in Sahih Muslim. It's actually from Ka'b al-Ahbar. It's one of the gharaib of Sahih Muslim, but it's actually from Ka'b al-Ahbar. And it obviously can't be taken literally, but it's about the creation. It's from the Isra'iliyat, because they have these beliefs also. And the idea that a human being was created on Jum'ah, in the last of the days. So then he says, وَالْخَلْقُ فِي أَكْثَرَ الْأَحْوَالِ يُقَالُ فِي إِيجَادِ الشَّيْء مِنْ شَيْءٍ قَبْلَهُ. So when we speak about creation, most of the time we will say that a thing comes, we mention the thing that it comes from before it. كَخَلْقَ الْإِنسَانِ مِنَ التُّرَابِ. So Allah created the human being from turab, from earth. So the human being is created from earth. And then he says, وَيَقْتَدِي تَرْكِيبًا, and then there's a composite. So we're a composite. Unlike Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in the Western scholastic tradition, they say that God is simple. But that means that غَيْرُ مُرَكَّب. It just means that God is not composite. There's no hypostasis in God, according to the Jews and the Muslims. The Christians have a different view on that. But our tradition is very clear. We are radical monotheists, and that God is one, and that there's no composite nature to God, nor are there more than one God. So God is neither composite in the divine nature. In other words, there's no parts. قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. So it negates tarkiba and it negates ta'addud. Neither of them. And so then, وَلِذَلِكَ قَالَ اللَّهُ تَعَالَى وَمِن كُلِّ شَيْءٍ خَلَقْنَا زَوْجَيْنِ لَعَلَّكُمْ تَذَكَّرُونَ. From everything we created in pairs. So everything is created in pairs, even the atom, right? When you get down to that basic fundamental structure, you'll find these pairs, these opposites. Allah has created سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون. Glory be to the one who created everything in pairs. These are what now, this term is used a lot, but it's true. They're binaries. Allah has created things. This is a binary world. There's up, there's down. It's all opposites. There's hot, there's cold. There's wet, there's dry. Right? There's intelligence, there's stupidity. Everything is in pairs. Allah has put everything in pairs. Even our bodies are paired. Allah has put us in these pairs. And then He made for us, خَلَقْنَا مِنْ أَنفُسِكُمْ أَزْوَاجًا. We made from yourselves mates, pairs, opposites, not the same, opposites. I mean, that's really important. They're opposites. A zawj is opposite. The left and the right foot. They're not the same. They're opposites. They're mirror opposites. In the same way that male and female are mirror opposites. The woman, when she sees the man, she sees her internal reality. When the man looks at the woman, he sees his internal reality. Men are hard on the outside, they're soft on the inside. Women are tough on the inside, but they're soft on the outside. This is the fitrah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why women have immense capacity to bear pain. And it's well known, anybody who's worked in medicine knows this. You know, get these old ladies, you do an arterial blood draw on them. I'm fine, go ahead, sweetie. You know, and then you get the big biker, you know, starts crying. I'm not making that up, am I? Dr. Yusuf, have you seen that? Huh? Yeah. So then he says, وَاعْلَمْ أَنَّ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ مِنَ الْمُبْدَعَاتِ فَتَامٌ. Everything from these mubda'at, from these extraordinary, unprecedented creations are complete. لا نقص فيه بوجه. There's absolutely no deficiency or defect in them. فلو كان فيه نقص لدل ذلك على نقصان مبدعه وصانعه. If there was any defect or deficiency, it would indicate a defect in the mubdi' وصانع, the one who made or created them. فأما المخلوق الذي هو مركب من شيء فقد يحتمل أن يكون فيه نقص ويكون نقصه عارضا من جهة ما ركب منه لا من جهة مركبه وفاعله. So as for the created one who is composite by nature, فقد يحتمل, it's possible أن يكون فيه نقص. He can have deficiency. ويكون نقصه عارضا, but that deficiency comes not from the original template, not from the original creation. It comes later. So in other words, like birth defects, all these things that happen, these are from different things that have entered into when people don't. I mean, there's a lot of reasons for them. There's genetic reasons, but they're arid. They're not from the original. They're not from the original, the way Allah created. Allah created everything perfect, but then because sin enters the world, because of and this is not to say, astaghfirullah, that people that have, unfortunately in some cultures they actually believe that. There's like a punishment and things like that. There's a lot of reasons. Now there's environmental reasons. You can be exposed to toxins and you get children that are born with birth defects and things like that. So this is all arid. It's not from the original creation. That's his point. So don't think the defects that you see are from God's creation. They're actually secondary effects. All right? فأما المخلوق الذي هو مركب من شيء فقد, and then he says ولا من جهة مركبه وفاعله ولهذا صارت المبدعات من الأشياء العلوية معرة من اعتراض الفساد فيها حالا فحالا. So this is an idea, I mean, I think he's referring to what they call the superlunary world. You know, the mubdi'at in the celestial realm are free from any possibility of corruption. So things in this world can be corrupted. Even our own physical genetics, corruption can actually come in. But he's saying that in that higher world, there's no realm. بل تبقى على حالها. It stays in its pure state. Now they used to think, I mean, the Aristotelian view was that everything in the heavenly world was perfect, everything revolved in perfect circles. You had Ptolemy who created the epicycles to explain retrograde motion in planets because he wanted everything. Circle was the perfect, because the circle is a perfect form because it has no beginning and no end. So it represents in that way a kind of symbolization of the divine reality. And that's why the circle was often used for that effect. We make a circle around a square, which is very interesting when we do tawaf, the squared circle, right? We make a circle around a square in the tawaf. So that's just part of Allah's creation, is that He's put all these mysteries into it. And so then, وَالْإِنسَانُ إِنسَانَانِ, the human being is two human beings. أَحَدُهُمَا Adam. So Adam is the first human being. And Adam is from, most of them say it's from Udma, Udmat al-Ard, because he was taken from the topsoil of all the earth. Allah took, and that's why we have white, black, brown, yellow. We have all these different colors, red, because all of the different soils are there in Adam. And so we have what they call recessive genes. The dominant gene is dark, right? We know that. So light comes out of the... And that's why Adam was tawny. He was dark. And Hawa was dark. They had to have been. Hawa in Arabic is one of the meanings of it. Al-ahwa is very dark. So that's the first. الذي هو أبو البشر. He's the father of humanity. ويجري هو من سائر الناس مجرى البذر. So he really, amongst human beings, he takes the place of the seed. الذي منه أنشئ غيره. From it, others were created. So from the seed comes other seeds, right? So he's the first. الباري تعالى قد تولى بنفسه إيجاده. So Allah took it upon Allah to create Adam directly, without intermediary. إيجاده. وتربيته, and also to educate him, to raise him, and to teach him. كما نبه تعالى عليه بقوله ما منعك أن تسجد لما خلقت بيدي. So he says to Iblis, what has prevented you from prostrating or bowing down to us, bowing down to what I have created with my own hand, بيدي. وقوله تعالى وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها. And Adam was taught, Allah taught Adam all of the names. So allama Adam. So allama in Arabic, alama is a mark. And as we know, the cuneiform writing, the original writing was actually allama. It was to imprint into mud. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying that it's been imprinted in us, this knowledge of naming. And what naming is naming is being able to see the universal in the particular. This is the gift that Allah has given the human being. Is called abstraction, tajrid. يجرد الكلية من الجزئية. He sees the universal in the particular. And so what this is essentially tawheed. We have been created as muwahideen. We are making everything one. So the muwahid is the one who makes something one. So when we talk about book, like I say, this is a book. What is a book? This is one book. But what is a book? How is it that our intellects can derive out of one particular book the concept of book? So we can have big books, little books, fat books, skinny books, written books, picture books, Japanese books, Persian books, Arabic books, but they're all books. What is that? Our ability to see the bookness of a book. That is the ability to make many one. And that's what Adam has been taught to do. He's been taught to make many one. So all of these attributes of God that look like pluralities, that in many cultures they end up being worshipped, like Shiva and Kali, right? These are different, these are attributes of God, but they personified into actual other than God, beside God, right? So seeing the many in the one, seeing the one in the many, not the many, not getting al-hakamu takathuru. You have been distracted by multiplicity. Takatharat al-ashya. You're distracted by multiplicity. Hatta zurtum al-maqabir. Until you go to the source. Right? You're distracted. I mean, takathur means obviously also accumulation of wealth, but takatharat al-ashya, multiplicity is takathur. So you're distracted by multiplicity. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this gift that He taught Adam. وَالثَّانِي بَنُوهُ, and then his children by extension. وَمُوجِدُهُ أَيْضًا الْبَارِي, He created them also, Al-Bari, the Creator. تعالى ولكن جعل إنشاءهم وتربيتهم وتعليمهم بوسائط جسمانية وروحانية. But He made their their nurturing and their education by means, both material and immaterial. Both material and immaterial. Bodily and spiritual. فَالْجِسْمَانِ كَالْأَبَوَيْنِ. So our parents are the source of our material existence. وَرُوحَانِ كَالْمَلَائِكَةِ. And the immaterial is the angels that are actually, they are the ones that make sure everything's happening properly. So they're actually with us all the time. They're our guardians, but they're also in the womb. They're making sure that everything is happening that's meant to happen, for good or ill. كما روي في الخبر الولد يكون 40 يوما نطفة. So الذين يتولون إنشاءه وتربيته. كما روي في الخبر الولد يكون 40 يوما نطفة ثم يصير علقة ثم يصير مضغة ثم يبعث الله ملكا فينفخ فيه الروح. So the child, and see the walad is, and Allah says al-walad, look at this, for all these pro-abortion people. The walad is 40 days, a nutfa. أَوَلَمْ تَكُنْ nutfa? Weren't you a nutfa? Like you were never a nutfa? We were all nutfa, right? 40 يوما nutfa, which is the zygote. And it's not 40 days. This hadith is actually a more correct, because there are different narrations of this hadith. So the idea of 120 has been clearly disproven by modern embryology. And science will dictate if it's absolute. If it's qat'i, then you have to reinterpret the hadith. If science is qat'i, you have to reinterpret the hadith. So we don't have any doubt about the embryological stages anymore. This is ilm qat'i. And so the idea that it's 120 days is just, it's, even though that is the jamhur and the vast majority, there are ulama that said 40 days. But it's clear that it's 40 days. So here, and then Allah, so it becomes nutfa zygote, and then it becomes alaqa, it clings to the womb, so it embeds. The zygote moves down, so the fallopian tube, when the boeda comes out, and then the many comes, they meet. And that is an incredible meeting, because that is the moment of creation, that Allah is bringing a new creation into existence. And all of us went through that. And when they meet, immediately, biological life begins. The boeda doesn't, it's not biological life. The many is not biological life. Right when they meet, biological life begins. And this is a completely unique set of genetic. في أي صورة ما شاء ركبك. In any form that He created to combine you. Allah says that in the Quran. He combined you. And now they talk about combinatorial DNA. Allah combined the human being. From all of, the Prophet ﷺ said, every child, every single human being, from Adam and Eve all the way down to your creation, every single one of them participated in your coming into existence. And we know that now with material sciences. The Prophet told us that. Who told the Prophet that? عَلَّمْهُ شَدِيدَ الْقُوَّةِ. So he says that it becomes alaqa, it embeds into the womb, and then it becomes a mudgha. The initial stages, it looks like a chewed piece of flesh. And you can see this now with microscopes. They see this. It looks chewed piece of flesh. And then it becomes, after the mudgha, and then it becomes ilam and kasawna al-ilam al-lahma, and then Allah creates a new creation. ثُمَّ يَبْعَثُ اللَّهُ مَلَكًا فَيَنْفُخُ فِيهِ الرُّوحِ. So the angel brings in the ruh. And this is the beginning, I think, because the first brain waves that we detect are at around 7 weeks. So it's around 40 days. You see the beginning of actually brain activity. So consciousness is emerging in the human being. Because the ruh, consciousness is from the ruh. إلى غير ذلك من الأخبار ولكون الأبوين سببا في وجود الولد عظم الله تعالى حقهما. And because your parents are the means by which you came into existence, Allah has magnified their right. وألزم بعد شكره شكرهما. And He has necessitated, after giving gratitude to Allah, to give gratitude to your parents. فقال أنشكر لي ولوالديك إلي المصير. To thank me and to thank your parents. And to me is your return. وَسُمِّيَ الْوَلَدْ إِبْنًا. We call the walad is called ibnan, which is from هو مشتق من بنيت البنية. I built the building. تنبيها على أنه جار للأب مجرى البناء للباني. So what he's saying there is very interesting. The bani didn't create the materials. He's just putting them together. So he's the source, but he's not the real source. He's just putting them together. So now ذكر العناصر التي أوجد منها الإنسان. So to make mention of the elements by which the human being has come into existence. قد ذكر الله تعالى إلى العناصر التي خلق منها آدم. So he mentioned these elements that he created Adam. ونبه على أنه جعله إنسانا في 7 درجات. And he mentioned that he created the human being through 7 degrees. There's 7 stages. وأشار إلى ذلك في مواضع مختلفة حسب ما اقتضته الحكمة. And he indicates this in different places based upon what the wisdom of it requires. So whatever the wisdom required, Allah makes mention of. فقال تعالى في موضع. In one place he said خلقه من تراب in Ali Imran. إشارة إلى المبدأ الأول. So when he said he created him from turab, this is to indicate the very beginning, the very initiation of creation is from turab. And then he said وفي آخر من طين, and then from mud, which is the mixture of the two. إشارة إلى الجمع بين التراب والماء, which is now he's mixed water with earth, right? Because we're water and earth. If you look at human constituents, the constituents that make up the human being, it's water and earth. We're about 70% water. As you get older, you dry out more, but we're about 70. Children have even more. Why we have to hydrate all the time? Because we're water. And then we're earth. We're made up of the same elements. It has all these elements that you find in earth, you're going to find in the human being, calcium and potassium and all these different elements. So then من طين إشارة إلى الجمع بين التراب وفي آخر من حمأ مسنون إشارة إلى الطين المتغير بالهواء أدنى تغير. Now he's added oxygen to the mix, and it becomes من حمأ مسنون. So it's also black. So it's a black clay that has a smell because of the oxygen. And this is an indication because Iblis, when he refused to bow down to Adam, one of the things he says, what, I'm going to bow down to something, min hamim masnun, like black clay. Like he actually points out the color of the clay because he's fire. And fire, the hottest fire, what's it look like? Is white fire. You know, he's like very proud of his coloration. Like he's looking. So if you want to know the Atba'u Iblis from Atba'ullah, that's one of the hallmarks, is that they have no problem with color. Either way, the Prophet ﷺ said, لا فضل لعربيا على عجميا ولا لعجميا على عربيا ولا لأبيض على أسود ولا لأسود على أبيض. He went both ways. There's no preference. And he also didn't collectivize. He didn't say, لا فضل للبيض على السود. There's no preference of whites over black. He said, al-abyad al-aswad, because it goes down to the individual level. I was in New York and this man said to me, you know, he's telling me how he said, you're a recipient of white privilege. I said, I don't use those terms. He said, well, because you benefit from it. I said, well, give me an example of white privilege. He said, well, I was in a building and these 2 cops came in and I immediately said, hey, I didn't do it. And one of the cops said, you're the right color. He said, that's white privilege. I said, no, it's not. That's racism. That's the problem, is in the cop. Don't project that onto me. I'm not going to feel ashamed the way Allah created me. You know. It's a big problem. But this is the source of it, is Iblis. It's kibr. It's arrogance in the heart. So then he said, وفي آخر من طين لازب إشارة إلى الطين المستقر على حالة من الاعتدال يصلح لقبول الصورة. So now it's become طين لازب, that it's ready to have form. So it's ready, like a potter forms the clay. At a certain point, it's ready for him to make. He has to prepare the clay, and then he can begin to fashion what he's going to fashion. So he's saying it's طين لازب. And then وفي آخر من صلصال من حمأ مسنون. And then it's dried, and as if you can hear this salsala, like a ringing in it. And then finally, وفي آخر, this is the sixth stage, من صلصال كالفخار, and then it becomes like this firing phase where it's like ready for firing. وقد أصلح بأثر من النار, so it's ready to be fired, to be put into the stove. فصار كالخزف, so it becomes like, khazaf is like potter's, it's the ceramic. So it's ready to be, it's finished, to be prepared. They say al-khazaf as-Sini is porcelain, right? The khazaf is the Chinese ceramic. وبهذه القوة النارية حصل في الإنسان أثر من الشيطنة. And because of this fiery potentiality in the human being, because there's fire, this force of fire, the human being has a demonic susceptibility. Because of the fire in the human being. The human being is susceptible to that fiery element, to become like a demon. وعلى هذا المعنى دل بقوله تعالى خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار وخلق الجان من مارج من نار. I mean, see, his istinbat is so beautiful. So he's saying, and this is why Allah said, the human being, man was created from salsalan fakhar. The human being was created from this fired clay. And then immediately after, وَخَلَقَ الْجَانَ, and he created the jinn. There's a relationship. Because we have the element of fire in us, there's a relationship that we have, a susceptibility to become like jinn, like the demons. And then min marij min nar. What is marij min nar? Nar, lahab, there's an instability to it. So the demons are unstable. They're not stable, right? That's why people that are under demonic influence they're completely unstable, right? So it's like lahab. It doesn't have any istiqrar. Whereas we're earth, so we have a kind of, there's a grounding to us. And healthy human beings, we say he's very grounded. Like this is what we say. And for people that aren't well, you say flighty. They're like airy. They're not, they're not grounded. There's no substance. There's nothing there, right? So then he says, by mentioning the jinn immediately after, فَنَبَّهَ عَلَى أَنَّ الْإِنسَانِ فِيهِ مِنَ الْقُوَّةِ الشَّيْطَانِيَّةِ بِقَدْرِ مَا فِي الْفَخَارِ مِنْ أَثَرِ النَّارِ. That he has demonic potentiality to the degree with which there is the effects of the fire from his original creation. وَأَنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ ذَاتُ مِنَ الْمَارِجِ الَّذِي لَا إِسْتِقْرَارَ لَهُ. So he's from this unstable flame that has no grounding. ثم نبه الله تعالى على تكميل الإنسان بنفخ الروح فيه. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has reminded us of the completion of the human being by the blowing of the spirit into him, into the human being. فقال تعالى إني خالق بشرا من طين. I am creating a human being from clay. فإذا سويته ونفخت فيه من روحي فقعوا له ساجدين. So when I have made him and then breathed into him the ruh, and this is now the bowing down of the angels. فهذه سبع درجات نبه عليها كما ترى. So these are the 7 stages that Allah has indicated just as you see. It went through these 7 stages. Now look at this. ثم دل على تكميل نفسه بالعلوم الآداب بقوله تعالى وعلم آدم الأسماء كلها. And then he indicated the completion of the human being, of the soul, with knowledges and erudition by saying, and we taught Adam all the names, all of them. ثم ذكر خلق بني آدم. And then after that, he mentions the creation of the children of Adam وعناصرهم, and the elements from which they're created. التي أوجدها حالة بعد حالة, stage after stage. فنبه على أنه جعلهم أناسا في 7 درجات. So we're also created in 7 degrees. Just like Adam was created in these 7 degrees, we are created in 7 degrees. So look at the 7 degrees. وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِّن طِينٍ. We created the human being from a chain beginning with earth. ثُمَّ جَعَلْنَاهُ نُطْفَةً فِي قَرَارٍ مَكِينٍ. 2. ثُمَّ خَلَقْنَا النُّطْفَةَ عَلَقَةً. And then we made the zygote into this clinging thing. 3. فَخَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَةَ مُضْغَةً. And then we created 4. We created the alaqa mudgha. فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَةَ عِظَامًا. And then we created the mudgha عِظَامًا. 5. فَكَسَوْنَا الْعِظَامَ لَحْمًا. And then we covered the idham with lahm, with meat, with flesh. We clothed it in flesh. ثُمَّ انشأناه خلقا آخر. 7. And then we created a new creation, another creation, a unique creation. فَتَبَارَكَ اللَّهُ أَحْسَنُ الْخَالِقِينَ. So blessed is God, the best, most beautiful of creators. Now look at this. It's very important. First of all, thumma and fa are both used in the Quran. Thumma is with muhla, fa is without muhla. When you have one over the other, you will take like if a narration has thumma and fa, then the meaning is going to be fa, right? Because thumma has the meaning of fa as well, right? So it's very interesting that Allah says, because this means that they're very close together. خَلَقْنَا الْعَلَقَ مُضْغَةً فَخَلَقْنَا الْمُضْغَةَ عِظَامًا. In fact, thumma can be actually used to be, you can say, Sada ibnuhu thumma abuhu. His son ruled and then the father. So thumma doesn't have to be tartib. Fa always has tartib. Thumma doesn't have to have tartib in Arabic, but fa always has tartib. So it's an indication that this was quicker than is indicated by the other narrations that use thumma. And also in Surah Al-Hajj, Allah uses thumma, but here He uses fa. فقوله تعالى ثم انشأناه خلقا آخر إشارة أو إشارة منه تعالى إلى ما جعل له من قوة العقل والفكر والنطق. So this is the rationality. This is the new creation. This is when we become human. Before that we're vegetable and then animal. Now we're human, right? And this happens very early, people. It's a human being in the womb. It's a human being. فإن قيل لما قال فكسونا. Now look at this. فإن قيل لماذا كسونا العظام لحما. Why did he say فكسونا العظام لحما? And then we clothed the bones with flesh. ولم يقل فخلقنا منه لحما. He didn't say we created from it flesh. كما قال منه في الأول, like he said about the other thing. So if you look at it's all جعلنا خلقنا خلقنا خلقنا, and then he says فكسونا. He doesn't say فخلقنا. He says كسونا. And then he says, قِيلَ إِشَارَةٌ مِّنْهُ تَعَالَى إِلَى لَطِيفَةٍ مِّن صَنْعِهِ. This is to a very subtle thing of Allah's creation. هُوَ أَنَّ النُّطْفَةَ انتهت إلى صورة العظم. That the nutfa, when it becomes eventually these bones, ثُمَّ أَنشَأَ اللَّهُ اللَّحْمَ إِنشَاءً آخَرَ. And then He creates the flesh. This is a new creation. لَا مِنَ النُّطْفَةِ وَأَجْرَاهَا مَجْرَى الْكِسْوَةِ. He made it like a cloth. التي قد يخلقها الإنسان ويجددها. Just as a human being wears a garment and he wears it out and then it's renewed. Like that, the flesh, you can cut it and you can lose a piece of it, it grows back. So he's saying كسونا العظام لحمة, because the lahm is renewed. It's renewed. It's not like the other things. If you sever the bone, you lose the bone. But the flesh can be renewed. And this is why they have grafting and all these things, right? I mean, grafting is basically you get cloth from, and then you add it on and it grows back. Amazing. وَلِذَلِكَ إِذَا قُطِعَ مِنَ الْحَيْوَانِ لَحْمٌ عَادٍ. If you sever meat from an animal, it will grow back. وَلَمْ يَكُنْ كَالْعَظْمِ الَّذِي لَا يَعُودُ بَعْدَ قَطْعِهِ. But it's not like bones that won't be restored after they've been severed. فإن قيل كيف حكم على جميع الناس أنه خلقهم من سلالة من طين. So if it said, how can you say that all of creation, all of humanity was created from a chain beginning with mud? والمخلوق منها هو آدم. When Adam was the one that was created, دون أولاده, and not his children. قيل إن ذلك على وجهين. this can be said, looked at from two different perspectives. أحدهما أنه لما خلق آدم من سلالة من طين فأولاده الذين هم منه أيضا منها. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created Adam from a chain from clay, his children by extension are also from that chain. But the second, والثاني أن الإنسان يتكون من النطفة ويتربى بدم الطمث. So the human being, he comes out of this nutfa, يتكون من نطفة, is created from this nutfa, and then continues to grow from the blood that comes into the nourishment, right, from he's in the placenta. Like he says, dam al-tamth. I think, tamth generally is the menstrual blood, but obviously it doesn't mean that. But tamth is also, tamitha is also, lam yatmithhum insum wala jan. So it's also related to. So he comes out, it's out of the pregnancy. So the very fact that it comes out of the blood of the pregnancy. So it could be dam al-tamth is the blood of the pregnancy. In other words, the child is being nurtured by the mother's blood. وَهُمَا يَتَكَوَّنَانِ مِنَ الْغِذَاءِ وَالْغِذَاءُ يَتَكَوَّنُ مِنَ الْحَيْوَانَاتِ. So they both came from nourishment, and nourishment comes from animals, and animals get their growth from vegetables, and vegetables come out of the earth. And so we're all from a سلالة من طين. You can look at it from that perspective. فَإِذَنِ الْإِنسَانُ عَلَى الْحَقِيقَةِ مِنْ سُلَالَةٍ مِنْ طِينٍ. So in reality, the human being is from a chain from earth. وعلى هذا نبه الله تعالى فلينظر الإنسان إلى طعامه. Let the human being look at his food or her food. أنا إنا صببنا الماء صبا ثم شققنا الأرض شقا فأنبتنا فيها حبا وعنبا وقضبا وزيتون ونخلا وأبا. So look at the human being, look at his food. We poured on it water, and then we caused it to split from the earth. فأنبتنا فيها حبة, and then we brought forth the seed, and then from that عِنبًا وقضبًا وزيتونا ونخلا وحدائق غلبا وفاكهة وأبا, all those things that come out. وقوله تعالى ولقد خلقنا الإنسان من سلالة من طين ثم جعلناه نطفة في قرار مكين, and then we place that nutfa in a safe place, not a place to be violated by a doctor. It's a safe place. It's a safe place. قرار مكين. وقوله تعالى والله خلقكم من تراب ثم من نطفة ثم جعلكم أزواجا. And he created you from earth, and then from a nutfa, and then he made you into pairs. فجعله الله تعالى من تراب على هذا الوجه. And so he's saying again that he says we're from earth. وقال تعالى من آياتي أن خلقكم من تراب ثم إذا أنتم بشر تنتشرون. And from among God's signs, that God created you from earth, and then there you are, human beings multiplying, spreading everywhere. وفي موضع آخر الذي أحسن كل شيء خلقه وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين. The one who perfected everything that God created, he made it beautiful and perfect. وبدأ خلق الإنسان من طين, and initiated the creation of the human being from earth, from mud. وعني بالإنسان ها هنا آدم. And it's what is meant by human being here is Adam. ولذلك قال تعالى ثم جعل نسله من سلالة من ماء مهين. And then Allah says we made Adam's offspring from a chain, from a ma'in mahin. Mahana is contemptible, It's something low. It's like a vile fluid. It's a fluid that, somebody would be disgusted by it. So that's, and mihna is like menial work, menial labor, they call it. And one of the, Aisha radiallahu anha, and she was obviously a true master of the Arabic language, but when she was asked what the Prophet was like in the house, she said, kana fi mihnati ahlihi. He was in doing menial tasks for his family. Like she didn't say fi khidmati ahlihi. She was pointing out through the language that he did things that maybe other people wouldn't think, very interesting. Fi mihnati ahlihi. like doing those things that maybe most people wouldn't want to do, like cleaning something that. فاقتصرها هنا على النطفة دون المبدأ الأول الذي هو التراب. وإنما ذكر هذه المبادئ متفرقة لحكمة اقتضت تخصيص ذكرها في موضعها الذي ذكرها فيه وليس شهر تخصيص ذكر كل واحد من ذلك في موضعه كما يليق بهذا الكتاب. I wish he would have gone into, but he's saying I could go into more detail, but it's not appropriate for this book. Amazing book. It's, trust me, it gets more and more intense. And then he ends it, and it's, yeah. These are the futuhats that our imams were given. And these are from people that dedicated their lives to Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I mean, this man dedicated his life to the Book of Allah, and Allah just gave him all of these openings from the book, because it's an inexhaustible book. It's an inexhaustible book. The meanings of the Quran will never end. They don't end. It's always something going to be new from it. So, online question? Yeah.
How can the fundamentals of understanding oneself be explained to kids so they apply this learning early?
I mean, with children, you have to be careful, because children, first of all, for the first several years, 5 or 6 years, you just need to leave them in the garden that they're in. They're in a very beautiful world. I mean, you can say things. You should, when they start understanding things, you can begin to talk. I mean, we thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And children are naturally spiritual, so it's not difficult for them to understand the immaterial world. But you also have to be easy with them. The Prophet ﷺ said, I mean, this riwayah has the meaning is very sound. He said, لَعِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Sayyidina Ali, also it's related. لَعِبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. Play with them for 7 years. It's a time of play. And believe it or not, play, and this is one of Piaget's great insights, the pediatric psychologist who studied children. Piaget said that their play is their work. Like they're actually working. What they're doing when they play, there's really important developmental elements to their play. So play is very important. And then لَعِبُهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ وَأَدِّبُوهُمْ لِسَبْعٍ. And then begin to discipline them and train them, which means educate them, أَدِّبُوهُم. Because ta'adib is also, mu'addib is the traditional name for the teacher, was called mu'addib. Because it's tarbiyah and ta'lim, it's character development as well as education. And then khaliluhum li sab'in, and then befriend them, be like a friend to them. Once they reach 14, they're moving into adulthood, and then you just have to be there for them. But they need to become independent, and that in Erickson's crises, it's identity versus identity confusion. They need to come into their own identity as adolescents and find out who they are. And then he said, after that, then you have to let them go. They're not yours. They have their own trajectories. They have their own lives. I mean, hopefully, if you've raised them right, they'll love you and they'll care about you and they'll want to take care of you and help you and in your need. But they also have their own lives, and it's very important to recognize that. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with children. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man kana lahu sabi falyatasaba." If you have a child, then play with the child like a child. The Prophet used to carry Hassan and Hussein on his back, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he loved children, obviously, and children loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They loved the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There's so many. He visited Nughair, Umair, who was the brother of Anas when his pet died. And from that, they derive several fiqh rulings, including you can visit people when their pets die as a ta'ziyah. But he visited him, and what did the pet do? Like he was making him think. Like what happened? Because one of the things about pets is it introduces children into mortality. Because pets usually Pets don't live as long as we do, and so pets tend to die. And then they also see animals. I mean, one of the tragedies of Western culture is they've divorced meat from slaughter. And so people no longer slaughter meat or have any relationship with the slaughtering of meat. But it's very important. And there was a man who did a documentary in Canada. It's very interesting. I didn't see the documentary, but I read about it. But it was very interesting what he said, because he decided to only eat meat for 1 year that he raised and slaughtered. And one of the things that the farmers that he bought the meat from was, don't name the animal. But he would name the animal. And he said what it did, when they ate it, they would remember the name of the animal, and they felt gratitude to the animal. Like they felt a gratitude that the animal sacrificed its life for their life.
What steps can we take to be human again?
Well, this is why I'm teaching the book. Just be patient. Yeah, he's going to explain it all.
How can we revive an ummah oriented towards our created purpose?
I mean, I think we have to revive ourselves, first of all. Yeah, we should be more concerned about reviving ourselves than the ummah. Allah will revive the ummah when we revive ourselves. Yeah, we focus too much on these big grand schemes. Yeah, we need, the problem is the individual. And we're all going to die. We're only here a short period. And the same problems are going to be here. I mean, human beings have been doing the same stuff for millennia. I mean, Iblis must be bored. You know, because we're just so predictable. I mean, that's how AI works, right? On the predictability of human beings. So, what's unpredictable is salah. That's what's amazing. And that's why it's so powerful, is because, you know, people shouldn't be surprised when people bring money that they found on the street. Now they're like heroes. That should be a normal human being. When somebody finds something and they turn it in. I mean, I was in Medina once, and because I lived in Medina, and I was living with the Mauritanians, and we used to walk every day from the Har al-Gharbiyah, when Medina was all dirt roads. And I'll never forget, I said to this Sudanese man, Mirghani, the beautiful Sudanese brother, I said to him, yeah, it's really, I can't believe that the government doesn't pave the roads here. He said, astaghfirullah, don't say that. We don't want them paved. This is the earth that the Prophet walked on. He said, it's musk. We don't want them paved. Now they're paved, and I regret, yeah, he was right.